Coming up on this Friday edition of Newsline at noon, the Incheon Asian Games kick off today with athletes from 45 nations taking part in 16 days of sporting action at Asia's #1 sporting extravaganza. The vote count in Scotland's independence referendum is well underway. The result is likely to be known in a few hours, but the latest exit poll gives the no vote an 8% lead. Plus, a flurry of high-level meetings between Korean and Japanese officials are raising hope for a breakthrough in their frosty bilateral ties. These stories and more on Newsline at noon.
It's noon Friday, September 19th here in Korea. Thanks for tuning in. Live from Seoul, I'm Ju.
It's very good to have you with us. I'm Mark Broom. Today we begin in Incheon, where the two-week celebration, that is the 17th Asian Games, gets underway tonight.
Right, from details on the opening ceremony highlighted by traditional performances and K-pop stars to a rundown of the scope of the sporting event, our Kwon-soa starts us off.
Under the theme, Meet the Bright Future of Asia, the 17th Asian Games are ready to kick off. The city of Incheon is welcoming 15,000 athletes and officials from across the continent to join Asia's largest multi-sport event, which begins this Friday. The opening ceremony starts 6 p.m. at Incheon Asia's main stadium with traditional folk performances and shows by famous Korean wave stars such as Psy, Kim Soo-hyun, and EXO. The main celebration is to begin at 19:19 p.m., marking September 19th, the start of the 16-day event, when all 45 participating nations will enter the stadium in the alphabetical order according to the Korean language. North Korea will enter as the 30th country, and South Korea as host country will walk in last. The highlight of the evening will be the lighting of the Asian Games torch. Famous athletes like baseball star Lee Seung-yup, golfer Park In-bi, speed skater Lee Kyu-hyuk, and others will pass the torch along, but the identity of the final torchbearer remains a secret. A total of 439 gold medals are up for grabs in 36 sports at these Asian Games. South Korea has a total of 1,068 athletes competing, its largest number ever, and aims to secure second place in the overall medal count for the 5th consecutive event. But more importantly, the nation hopes for the event serves as a symbol of sport and goodwill for the 4.5 billion Asians across the region. Kwon-soa, Arirang News.
Now, hosting any large international sporting event has its economic pros and cons, and this applies equally to the 17th Asian Games.
Yeah, that's right. But as our Kim Hyun-bin reports, organizers are very confident that the city of Incheon and the nation as a whole will come out on top in the end.
The eyes of Asia's 4.3 billion people will be on Korea's western port city of Incheon this Friday, as the 17th Asian Games kick off with what promises to be a grand opening ceremony. Korea's third hosting of Asia's premier sporting event is one of the most expensive yet, with the central government and the city of Incheon laying out over $4.7 billion on infrastructure and road construction alone. But the general feeling is that it's going to be worth it.
We expect the Games to have a very positive effect on the local economy and the city. The Korea Institute for International Economic Policy says it'll have an economic benefit of $12.5 billion and create around 270,000 jobs. It'll also help us boost Incheon's brand value.
So, in certain ways, everything is looking great, but ticket sales are worryingly slow. With less than a day before the Games officially open, only 10 of the 36 gaming categories have sold out. Only around 60% of tickets for Friday's opening ceremony have been sold. Ticket sales for the actual sporting events are lower, as sold-out events are generally taking place in smaller venues. Organizers will be hoping they aren't left with tens of thousands of empty seats during events in the large stadiums, such as the athletics. They say that while sales are a little lower than average, low ticket sales are to be expected during the Asian Games, as opposed to an event like the Olympics.
It goes without saying that ticket sales for different sports vary a great deal. When popular Korean athletes are involved in events like swimming, gymnastics, and badminton, tickets sell out super quickly. But it's obviously much more difficult to get many people to come to less recognized sports like sepak takraw and kabaddi.
Organizers say they expect ticket sales to pick up steam once the games officially open, and are already reporting a pickup in recent days. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, it's been dubbed Scotland's Day of Reckoning. Millions of Scots headed to the polls on Thursday to make a simple but incredibly important choice: to remain as part of the United Kingdom or to become an independent country.
The official result, a permanent decision that will affect the lives of everyone in Britain, is expected within the next couple of hours. Kim Min-ji has the details.
All eyes are now on the results. Will Scotland remain part of the United Kingdom or will it become an independent country? Counting is underway and a record turnout is anticipated. Latest results show that 4 districts voted no with turnouts of over 80%. A survey conducted by YouGov shortly after the polls closed showed that those against independence were leading by 8 percentage points. Some 4.3 million were registered to participate in the historic vote that could change their lives, and for the first time, 16 and 17-year-olds were allowed to cast votes.
I voted yes because I think Scotland will be more democratic. We won't have to live under a Conservative government again.
Because I love Scotland and I want it to just remain the same.
Those wanting to break away from the Union say they would benefit by choosing their own government and giving all governing powers to Scotland, while those who want to remain argue that they would be economically better off. But with as many as 600,000 undecided up until the last minute, results could swing one way or the other. The final results are expected in the early hours of Friday morning, local time. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
And we're just hearing that a 5th district has voted no, but Dundee, which is a fairly big city in Scotland, has voted yes.
Right. Whatever the result turns out to be, this vote marks a historic day for Scotland and the United Kingdom.
It certainly does. And to get a sense of the atmosphere in Scotland and an analysis of the implications of Scotland's decision one way or the other, we're now joined on the line by Peter A. Smith, a TV journalist from STV, which is one of Scotland's biggest news channels. Peter, thanks ever so much for joining us at this late hour for you.
No problem at all. It's good. I'm glad to be joining you in Korea.
So, Peter, we won't know the official result for a couple of hours yet, but we've heard exit polls seem to indicate the Scots have voted to stay in the Union. Do you think this will be the final result? And did you expect a no vote all the way along?
Well, it's difficult to say. I mean, we are still in the very early stages of the votes being counted here in Scotland. A number of the biggest cities have still to be declared. Glasgow, for example, being one of them, is a city that is expected to vote yes, and if the Yes campaign can gather enough support in cities like Glasgow, then that will add to the sum total overall and would help their cause. However, what we have seen already tonight is early counts, places like the Western Isles and Clackmannanshire that were expected to vote yes, or the Yes campaign anticipated they were going to vote yes, actually voted no. So it does seem to be that the trend and the momentum at the moment is with the no campaign.
And Peter, if Scotland does in fact vote no to independence, what changes are we going to see in Scotland's relationship with the rest of the Union? For example, Westminster says it'll grant Scotland greater powers.
Indeed, well, that's an interesting point, and it's one that many people in Scotland have both eyes firmly focused on just now, because we saw the 3 leaders of the main Westminster parties coming to Scotland, Ed Miliband, Nick Clegg and the Prime Minister, David Cameron, and they signed a vow to the people of Scotland saying that they would give Scotland more powers in the event of a no vote. However, those 3 parties are not in agreement on what those powers would be, and moreover, this could be even the trickier point, especially for the Prime Minister, David Cameron. His backbenchers in England, in the southeast, southwest of England and other parts of the UK, are very angry that he has pledged more powers to Scotland. They see this as the Prime Minister rewarding Scotland for kicking up a fuss, as it were, They see him as he is rewarding Scotland, giving Scotland a sweetener to stay in the Union, when they would argue that why are you promising Scotland more powers when we don't want you to do that? There's no appetite for that. Concentrate on the rest of the United Kingdom. So the Prime Minister and Ed Miliband and Nick Clegg might well agree that they would like to give Scotland more powers, but at the Westminster Parliament they would have to have the support of the MPs, and whether they have that or not, enough support to pass new legislation, to make it an act to give Scotland more powers, we don't know yet. We will see that in due course. And also we have to wait and see what those powers will be, because the parties are not in agreement on how much power they would give to Scotland and what exactly that power would be.
Well, it certainly is going to be very complicated, however the Scots vote. And there were concerns that if the Scottish voted yes, this would have hit the domestic economy really hard. What kind of impact, negative or positive, could independence have on the Scottish economy?
Well, I was speaking to one market expert earlier this week, and he was talking about a knee-jerk reaction. Now, you may have seen, if you monitor the markets, that even when the first poll returned, the first poll from prior to the election 10 days ago suggested that the Yes campaign had taken the lead. The value of the pound dropped. The pound sterling took a major blow, and so they anticipated that just because the Yes campaign was taking the lead, that people were starting to panic. People were potentially going to start moving money south of the border out of Scottish banks. We've seen a reaction from the banks in Scotland. Royal Bank of Scotland have indicated that they would move their headquarters south of the border, although whether that would impact any the jobs or anything like that remains to be seen. But we did see a knee-jerk reaction just from the polls. So if Scotland voted for independence, the market experts I was speaking with were telling me we would see even more of a knee-jerk reaction and immediately afterwards, although they did expect that would calm, that would dwindle once the negotiation process between the Scottish Government and the UK Government started to take place, and once we established, this is the key point, what currency an independent Scotland would use. Would they be able to keep using the pound, and would that be in a formal currency union?
All right, we'll have to keep our eyes on the final results that will come out in about 2 hours or so. Thank you, Peter, for your insights today.
Thank you very much for having me, and best wishes to all my friends in Korea.
That was Peter A. Smith, a TV journalist from STV, offering his thoughts on the historic vote in Scotland. And we move to other news. Korea appears ready to talk with Japan as long as those talks are not between President Park Geun-hye and Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
Yeah, that's right. President Park will meet with a former Japanese Prime Minister in Seoul later today, while senior officials from the two sides discuss ways to resolve their differences on Japan's wartime atrocities. Our Hwang Sang-hee reports.
President Park Geun-hye will welcome a special envoy sent by Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe. Former Prime Minister Yoshiro Mori will visit President Park on Friday afternoon, reportedly bearing a letter from the Japanese leader. On the same day in Tokyo, senior officials from the two countries will discuss ways to resolve Japan's wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. The meetings are the latest in Korea's demonstration of flexibility for talks with Japan. Seoul and Tokyo are fine-tuning plans for a strategic dialogue, the first since President Park took office. Vice foreign ministers from the two countries are expected to meet in Tokyo early next month to discuss a wide range of pending issues. Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se and his Japanese counterpart Fumio Kishida are also looking to meet at the United Nations in New York next week. The string of meetings has fueled speculation about a possible summit between President Park and Prime Minister Abe in November on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Beijing. The two leaders have not held a bilateral meeting since taking office. But President Park remains adamant that Japan must apologize for its wartime treatment of Korean comfort women before she sits down with her Japanese counterpart. Hwang Sang-hee, Arirang News.
Now, the Korean government's plan to nudge the domestic economy back on track includes a massive boost in spending.
Right, and as our Kim Ji-in reports, next year's budget proposal will particularly focus on job creation, welfare, and improving the nation's safety infrastructure. She breaks down the numbers for us.
Finance Minister Choi Kyung-won is all in. The $19 billion spending increase in the 2015 budget, the highest since 7 years, demonstrates the government's will to turn the economy onto a path of recovery. The plan includes a $670 million boost in spending for social overhead capital projects next year to $23.4 billion, money that will go toward improving the nation's railways and roads in hopes it will spur job creation in the construction sector. It's something the government is placing a premium on in 2015. Next year's budget for areas related to job creation comes to $13.7 billion, an increase of $1 billion from this year. Public safety is another focus in wake of the April ferry disaster that left more than 300 people dead. The safety budget for things like upgrading firefighting equipment and renovating older buildings such as schools has increased nearly 18% to $14 billion. And for the first time ever, more than 30% of next year's budget, around $110 billion, will be directed toward boosting welfare, including the basic pension plan. It was one of President Park Geun-hye's campaign pledges to provide a maximum of $190 to people over the age of 65 who are in the bottom 70% income bracket. The Korean economy grew a mere 0.5% on quarter during the April to June period, the lowest growth in nearly 2 years. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
And time now to check some of the other international stories we're following this Friday afternoon. For that, we turn to our Eunice Kim standing by at the News Center.
Eunice, United States warplanes have moved beyond their supportive role and begun directly hitting Islamic State targets in Iraq. And this is pushing militants into a corner.
That's right, Mark. And as the pressure heats up, the extremist group has released another propaganda video. This one again featuring a British hostage whose life is not threatened, but appears to be under duress. Our Park Ji-won reports.
A new video released by Islamic State militants on Thursday shows a British journalist who was captured in Syria in 2012. John Kenley, dressed in orange and apparently under duress, takes aim at the British and U.S. governments.
Seeing as I've been abandoned by my government and my fate now lies in the hands of the Islamic State, I have nothing to lose. For the next few programs, I'm going to show you the truth as the Western media tries to drag the public back to the abyss of another war with the Islamic State.
On the battlefield, the U.S. conducted an airstrike targeting IS training camps in Iraq on Thursday. It was the first strike not directly related to supporting Iraqi or Kurdish forces and came on the same day the U.S. Senate authorized support for the Syrian opposition in their fight against IS. Secretary of State John Kerry says the U.S. plan to counter the threat is coming together thanks to allies like France.
President Hollande has announced that he has authorized for France to provide airstrikes in Iraq in response to a request from the government of Iraq, and we obviously welcome that public announcement. That's one of the countries that we've been counting in our list.
The U.S. is ready to strike the militant group in Syria as well. Targets have already been mapped out. Military officials say they are now just waiting for the president's authorization. Regarding a CNN report that there might be a Korean member of the Islamic State, Korea's National Intelligence Service said that was impossible to verify. But the intelligence service did add that if there were any Koreans in the group, they might be North Koreans, considering the close relations between Damascus and Pyongyang. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
The United Nations will send a special team to Ebola-ravaged West Africa as the Security Council issued a resolution declaring the epidemic a threat to international peace and security. It is only the second time the world body has acted on a public health crisis following its resolutions on HIV/AIDS. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, who said a 20-fold increase in assistance is needed, announced that UN personnel will be on the ground by the end of the month. month. This as the number of people confirmed killed by the hemorrhagic virus has surpassed 2,600. One of the worst hit Sierra Leone has ordered its 6 million people to stay home for 3 days in an effort to locate the sick in hiding. This as desperation is driving people to buy the purported blood of Ebola survivors in black markets in affected regions, this according to the WHO. And it is official, China's mega e-commerce website Alibaba has finalized its initial public offering at $68 a share, the largest for a U.S.-listed company in history. Driven by high investor interest, it will make its debut on the New York Stock Exchange on Friday under the ticker symbol BABA. It has raised $21.8 billion for the company and its shareholders. The major tech company was founded by a former English teacher, Jack Ma.
Stay up to date on the latest news out of Korea. Connecting to our team of reporters about the issues that matter to Korea. On air, on your mobile, online. Find out more about Korea on Newsline at noon with Mark Broom and Jin-ju.
I'm Jin-ju with Pro.
Market researcher, strategy analytics said Thursday that LG Electronics brought in about 11.
It's confirmed South Korea will have a new U.S. ambassador soon after senators approved Mark Lippert as the next top U.S. diplomat to Seoul. Lippert's chief of staff to Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel was nominated in early May to replace Sung Kim. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee approved Lippert's nomination in late June, but his nomination had been stuck in the Senate along with dozens of other ambassadors to be. Now, his confirmation came despite opposition from Republicans who said Lippert, a close friend to President Barack Obama, was a political nominee.
Now, following the liberalization of its rice market, which should come next year, South Korea will now propose to use its imported rice to aid North Korea. Seoul's Agriculture Ministry said on Friday that the government plans to lift its limitation on the usage of rice under the so-called Minimum Market Access Agreement. This agreement sets the minimum amount of rice the market must import once it opens its market, and that has been set at 30% before the market is liberalized. The South Korean government has thus far restricted the use of this rice to the domestic market only. But later this month, Seoul will submit the modified amendment to the World Trade Organization, which will then decide whether to grant South Korea approval to send the imported rice to North Korea. Now, from K-pop and Korean movies to Korean food, the cultural reach of the nation is extending by the year. The latest entrant into the race are Korean TV programs, which are finding a new home in the United States. Our Connie Kim explains.
The influence of the Korean wave has established itself in the Asian market. Now, remakes of Korean dramas and variety shows are set to set sail across the Pacific into the North American market. Older celebrities traveling around the world. That's the idea behind the Korean variety program that's now been picked up in the United States. This romantic fantasy, where the main character can travel 20 years back in time for a total of 9 times, will also be remade in the U.S. The production company behind the two shows, CJ says American buyers are interested in the subject matters of Korean programs.
American dramas go multiple seasons, so U.S. buyers decide to buy the program depending on how well it can be expanded into a series. In the case of 9, the main character travels through time 9 different times. The U.S. producers are working on giving that angle a twist.
Another Korean program, Good Doctor, will get an American twist. The drama, which centers around a genius surgeon with Asperger's syndrome, has been picked up by American broadcaster CBS.
Overcoming disabilities is a topic that appeals to viewers, and the bits of romance in the plot probably grabbed the attention in the U.S.
Korean programs are the hot new thing in the U.S., according to Drama Fever, a video streaming website.
Our biggest title end of last year was Heirs. The premiere, so episode 1 of that title, did more views than the season finale of 90210 in the U.S., which was broadcast around the same time. So they're gaining definitely in terms of momentum and popularity.
The timing for entering the U.S. market seems just about right, given the success that remakes of Latin American drama, telenovelas, and European dramas already enjoy. Korean producers are now hoping these remakes can be another boost to the Korean wave. Connie Kim, Arirang News.
Our chilly morning made a way for highs on the warm side under lots of sunshine, which means a big temperature difference in many areas. So let's take a closer look at the readings for today. The high in Seoul, Daegu, and Gwangju will all rise to 28 this afternoon. And for other regions, it looks like down on Jeju Island and Daejeon should see highs of 24 and 27 respectively. Now, the opening ceremony for the Asian Games will kick off in Incheon this evening at 6. And the weather should be pleasant, but if you plan to be on hand for the ceremony, be sure to dress warmly. And the weather should stay pleasant throughout the weekend, not only in Seoul, but also in many areas. Well, that's all for Korea, and here's international weather for viewers around the world.
And that does it for this edition of Newsline at Noon.
Jinju and I will be back at the same time on Monday. Have a great weekend. Goodbye.